Hello, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out to listen to another great episode of the Allegheny Trail podcast. Hopefully, you guys had a great week already, experiencing some of the solar eclipse throughout the U.S. or wherever you may be coming from. We got a great episode tonight. We've got a special guest, but first, I want to take a minute and introduce my co-host Justin and Molly. If Molly's there too, did you get out and see the eclipse at all, Justin?
I tried. I was out there on top of Smith Knob on Section 4 North, hoping to catch a glimpse, but it was so cloudy that day. I got about 2 seconds before it faded behind the clouds. So got some trail work done that day, but just probably really good view of the eclipse.
Gotcha. I was in Morgantown and we had some definitely like thunderstorm, dark clouds. We had some, not by any means, full eclipse, but we had all the lights in the shopping centers come on. Everybody's headlights were coming on. It was definitely cool. And then I had the glasses so you could just like see the little crescents moving through. Very special. So we got a couple things going on this week. I got something in the mail from your wife, and I want to start off with that. But for those of you on the audio, let me see, maybe you can tell what this is. I don't know if you heard that or not, but I'm drinking out of a really cool koozie that says, "Celebrating West Virginia's longest hiking trail." It's got a starry design. Comes up 1974 to 1924. We want to thank Marissa, who made the design on this. It's got some mountains. We're having our 50th, family. Come on now. So a couple other things that came in the mail besides the koozie from Tiffany were, drum roll please, we got a 50th sticker, classic, right? Then again, we have a holographic sticker, which Marissa designed. We've got our little yellow blaze for those of you that might be able to check it out over here on there. Super cool. We've got a couple more things, Julie. We got a couple coasters that are cork thick, really nice. So you're not going to mess up anything with your drink and your koozie that hopefully won't sweat. And then last but not least, we've got a huge towel, Allegheny Trail sweat towel that also serves as a potential element to capture, it's blaze orange, got some blaze here in it, and or could be like emergency use, could be tied up for a tourniquet or something crazy, but super lightweight. And so for those of you that want to participate in our 50 on 50 challenge, right? That's hike 50 miles. Julie, I think you're going to knock that out. That's donate, your time for 50 volunteer hours. Justin, I know you have that in a weekend, as does Molly, and or do a combo. So it's an invitation to come on out, help the trail, help grow the trail, show some love to the trail. It's $10.50. You can buy it in our store, but I was pretty excited to see I got that in the mail. So we're launching that off. Justin, you want to take a minute and we'll introduce our guests. But right before that, maybe we should always introduce Julie with production. So Julie's here, as well as our established and bona fide extraordinaire guest tonight.
Yep. Oh, is this where I'm supposed to pull up this screen?
So you want it?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I know it's been a little over a month, I think. And it's always good to be back on Wednesday evenings with the crew from the Allegheny Trail. And as always, I will be in the chat looking at your questions as we go, asking the questions. I know we have a fantastic guest this evening that I have already had the privilege of interviewing and spending some time with, quite frankly, about 10, 11 months ago. So I am looking forward to this evening as well. Just a reminder for everybody that not only can you find the podcast, the Allegheny Trail podcast, right here on YouTube, you could also find it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music /podcast, and iHeartRadio. And that is all I'm going to spew forth right now. So am I turning it back over to you, Nicole, or Justin? Doesn't matter to me.
Sure.
Happy to see everybody.
Yeah, we're super stoked you're here, Julie, as always, and taking us under your wing is a big deal. So we thank you for that. Justin, go ahead and introduce Mr. Handlebar. Come on.
Yeah, this time we've got two-time Allegheny Trail Thru-Hiker Rick Handlebar. It's great to have him on here. He's done a lot with the trail, not just hiking it, but maintenance, quite a few different things on not just our trail, but Buckeye Trail as well. But it's great to have you on here, Handlebar.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll start off with those of you that don't know Rick. We'll go way back. Rick, tell us when you actually started to get into hiking. I know it hasn't been like a lifelong sport for you or activity.
Well, I was probably 11 or 12 years old. Belonged to the Boy Scouts over in Sharon, Pennsylvania. It's halfway between Pittsburgh and Lake Erie on the border of Pennsylvania. Me and my buddy, we would hike around this abandoned 100-acre farm that we called Death Valley. I think it got its name from some kid was swinging on a grapevine off a cliff and maybe fell, but I don't know why, but it was always called Death Valley. Anyhow, we did a lot of hiking then, but in terms of backpacking, probably goes back to, oh Lord, when I was 40 years old. So that's almost 39 years.
Fantastic.
But in long distance backpacking, I decided I wanted to retire soon enough that I would be healthy enough to hike the Appalachian Trail. Up here, we call it the Appalachian Trail because I'm north of the Mason-Dixon. But started right out in March 15th of 2006. It was kind of like my retirement present to hike the Appalachian Trail. And I felt so good after that. Of course, when I finished, I weighed about what I did when I graduated high school, which is 25 pounds less than you see me here. So I was pretty gaunt, but I felt really good. And all my physical ailments pretty much went away. So I felt I should keep on doing these long distance hikes. And the group of people, they now they have a name for it. They call it the Tramily, the trail family. But several of the group of people that I hiked with on the AT, they all decided in 2006, we're going to do the PCT. And in 2010, 2008, we're going to do the PCT. And then in 2010, we're going to do the CDT, the Continental Divide Trail. And I did all those things, and I kept on with shorter hikes, including my first hike of the Allegheny Trail in 2011. They were all training hikes, so I'd stay in trail shape because you don't want to lose that hard-won trail legs. And keep in good shape. Been doing it ever since, except for COVID.
Amazing. So, like right now, I mean, several of us in the chat, maybe on the audio later, you're a triple crowner. You've done 2 of the Allegheny Trails, what we're hearing so far. How many miles do you have under your belt?
Over 16,000. I just added over 16,500. I know people want more. I started younger.
Yeah, that's great. So you also help out in your home state of Ohio. Tell us about forgive me, but what trails exactly are you with there?
Well, the Buckeye Trail makes a big loop around Ohio, and it's part of the North Country Trail. And when I got back from the Appalachian Trail, I found out about an outfit, a club. It isn't really a club, or it wasn't really a club. It's now gone, but it was just a website where people could list who weekend backpack trips or week-long backpack trips in the summer or whatever. One of the persons that was posting on there was a very active trail maintainer on the North Country Trail. And I was looking for something to do in addition to volunteering on the Appalachian Trail. So I started volunteering on the North Country Trail. There's various trail clubs. One of them happens to be the Wampum, Pennsylvania chapter. And the Wampum chapter covers from all of Lawrence and Beaver counties in Pennsylvania, and then Columbiana County, Carroll County, and all the way over to where it intersects, the North Country Trail intersects and hops on the Buckeye Trail.
Gotcha.
Since I was working on it, I finally decided to hike a part of it. It started at that time, it started at Lake Champlain, the bridge over Lake Champlain in New York, went through the Adirondacks, followed along the route of the Erie Canal in New York, and then it hopped on the Finger Lakes Trail and ran into the North Country Trail and the Allegheny National Forest in western Pennsylvania, and headed down and comes into Ohio, south of Youngstown, where I live, north of Pittsburgh, and probably within 10 miles of West Virginia, believe it or not.
Sure.
And, it kind of heads west from there, jumps on the rest of the Buckeye Trail, and I hiked it as far as Interstate 77. And I stopped there because I was hiking in September. South Central Ohio in September is not very pleasant to be hiking in 90 degrees and 90% humidity and guaranteed thunderstorms every afternoon.
Well, Rick, so the reason I asked you this is, you're like the Energizer Bunny here. You're hiking, you're volunteering, you're traveling to go volunteer. Tell us how you got into doing some maintaining and volunteering with the Allegheny Trail.
Sure. Well, when I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, because this was down south, came up Peter Mountain, and came to the intersection. There's a sign for the Allegheny Trail. It's described it. It goes all the way to Pennsylvania. I thought, I never heard of that. I'm going to have to check that out. So a couple of years later, I got the guidebooks and joined with Stub because you got a deal on the guidebooks. I think you got a discount. I don't know, remember for sure. And I decided one of these springs or falls, it's a good spring or hike or a fall hike. I don't know if the Allegheny Trail would be a good summer hike because weeds grow fast and it's hard to keep up with them. But in the fall and the spring, the weather's a little more mild. And I thought I would do a spring hike after a ski trip out west, came home, was going out for my second bite of the Continental Divide Trail. I did it in 3 chunks. And I needed to get in shape and test out my gear. So I hopped on the Allegheny Trail starting March 15th of 2011. I thought I'd be having a nice early spring hike. And for a few days, it was a nice early spring hike. In fact, all the way down to where? All the way down to when I got on the mountain where all the shelters are.
Schaefer's?
Lady. All the mountains, they blend in together in my mind. But anyhow, got up there and next thing you know, I'm in a snowstorm. And I said, well, there's a shelter not too far. I'd rather stay in a shelter than pack up a wet tent in the morning or even try to set up a tent in the rain. So I wound up in, I think it was Waddell Shelter. Waddell Shelter. And it wasn't in the kind of shape it's in today, back then in 2011. But it was dry enough, and I stayed there. Stayed in the next shelter, which is the, come on, help me, just
John's camp.
John's camp.
John's camp. And I hiked to John's camp shelter in the snow. And then hiked out of that and got down to Durban. Of course, the water was awful high that spring, so there was no question about trying to ford the Cheat River down there. So I walked the road out to US 250, walked down US 250 into Durban, and I was hoping to find a bed and breakfast or something, this place to stay, and there was nowhere to stay. But there was, I think the name of the bar was the American Club or something like that. They had the best French fries and a cheeseburger. And I had my resupply box at Eastport Campground where I was hoping to stay and get a shower and stuff. Well, Eastport Campground wasn't open yet. So, but fortunately, Mark, the owner of Eastport at the time, offered me to stay in a trailer he had there. I think they used it for the office in the summer. And it was wonderful. It was warm. It was heat. I put my boots over the hot air registers and they got dry. So it was quite an adventure, but it was not a spring hike at that point.
Right. And so you hiked your last one last year, like your secondary, we'll say, your second through hike.
Yeah.
What are some of the changes you've seen in that amount of time?
Well, there have been some reroutes. I know that because, or at least either reroutes or my head forgot everything because it seemed to go a little different ways. There was, when I first hiked, I had to trespass. I got too late. I'm sure the statute of limitations has expired, but I trespassed. Even though Allegheny Forest Products didn't want anybody on that Cheat River route, I walked that way anyhow. I wound up camping on where the railroad bed is, pretty close to where that big stream crosses there. You have to manage to get through. I don't think the Friends of Cheat Campground was there at the time. Might have been, but what else has changed? Got down to, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the town we were just talking about earlier.
Durban?
No, way before that. Up where the family shelter is.
Rollsburg.
Rollsburg. I thought it was Ralsburg. But Rollsburg was cool because they had they had a little grocery store there where that had hot food. Yeah. And you like that. And I stayed in that shelter. Had to take the high water route in, because I couldn't get across the low water bridge along the, it's not the Greenbrook, at Gladwin.
Mm-hmm.
And I camped right next to it and I put a pebble where the water was at night, got up in the morning and the water stayed high. It was 1.5 feet over that bridge. So there's no way I was going to cross that. One of the more exciting things about it is when I did get back on the trail after Rollsburg and continued on south, came to the section, let's see, going back in my mind, I did read through my trail journal so I could remember some of this stuff. And came to where I was crossing US 33 west of the name of the town escaping.
Evanwood?
Well, no, the big town.
Oh, Elkins?
Elkin. And wouldn't you know, it's pouring down rain. And I mean, it was pouring down rain. So all the side streams, now I was wearing boots at the time. They were nice and waterproof, and I'd tested them out for weeks. I was walking in the park right next to my house here. And so they were good and broken in, but I'm walking down the trail and every side stream flowing in the glade was in flood. You weren't going to rock hop those. Well, I wound up with boot overflow, I call it, where the water goes over in your boots, so you're pushing through the water with your boots. I was looking at the glade, and it says, at that time, I didn't read the guidebook updates that were online. They would have told me that the ford across the glade had now had a bridge, but I didn't read them. So I said, no way am I going to ford this raging river. And I had my GPS, it had a map on it. And I found a forest road that headed up and continued south, but it went up Middle Mountain. So I'm halfway to Middle Mountain. The rain is turning to sleet. The sleet is turning to snow. I'm on this old forest road, doesn't matter much. And I'm thinking, well, I hope nobody drives over it tonight because I'm setting my camp up right here on the road. Now, I made the mistake of not drying my boots out. Of course, I couldn't get a fire lit. It was too wet. I had opened them up because I was afraid it was going to freeze overnight. But you haven't lived until you put your feet on frozen boots.
Dear Lord.
Yeah, that's not fun. Well, yeah, get down to Glade. Went all the way across Middle Mountain, took the first right past that gas compressor station that's there to the east of Glade. Came into Glade, and I was running low on supplies because naturally I wasn't going as fast as I thought I'd be going. Finally got the boots warmed up by the time I was coming down into Glade. So that was beat that. There used to be a general store and post office in Glade. There was still a general store, and the building's still there. And they had a few things. What I really craved was Pepsi. So I had my Pepsi. That'd give me a little energy. And they had a box of mac and cheese. I got that for dinner, so I'd have something to eat. And a couple other things, little stuff. So I hiked on down, climbed the mountain, got to Willdale Shelter, cooked my meal, and wouldn't you know, that box of mac and cheese must have been on the shelf in that general store for 3 or 4 years. And added protein. Mealy margin. Oh, too bad, you gotta eat it. I figured they were sterile by the time they got boiled, so for 7 minutes, it was okay. It didn't taste bad or anything. It tasted just fine. So that's changed. What else has changed?
Well, I know you've worked on a lot of updates. I mean, for goodness sake, you come over and volunteer here a ton, different shelters, those type of things.
The other thing that's changed is the walk along the Glade from 33. I swear it used to stay close to the Glade. Now it climbs up away from the Glade, I assume because it's washed out down by the river where the railroad bed that it followed. So now it's climbing up on sides. So that's definitely changed. What else has changed? Of course, the shelters are all brand new. They're in essence been rebuilt, been painted. I helped paint a couple of them. So it took over, I actually, first time I came out and worked with Wista on the Allegheny Trail was just before I came back to the Continental Divide Trail. It was W5 in the year 2011. I got to that, of course, W5, they have the annual meeting. I was a member, so I got to vote, but I didn't know what was going on. It was down at that nice little lake at the end of a 30-mile road. She's name is escaping me now.
Lake Sherwood.
Lake Sherwood, nice place. And I was ready to read the Allegheny people, the trail people, the riot act about that ford. And they told me, why'd you need this, man? There's a bridge. I said, what? You didn't have it in your guidebook. I said, did you check the update? No, I didn't. So that's changed. And of course, there's a brand new shelter there. We just built a couple of years ago. Beautiful shelter, nice location. The other thing that's changed and was different for me is I came back, I had to leave at on this year's hike, the one I just completed. I had to leave because of a likely death in the family at Durban, because I knew after Durban, there's no way we could have a normal conversation if my wife needed to get a hold of me. So I left the trail there and decided I'd come back and finish in the fall, which I did. And in the summer, for a couple of weekends where we had trail work, I managed for the first time to do the low water route from Gladwin to Sully along the Glade. Of course, I'd worked on that section, but at that time the washout wasn't quite complete, so I had to go down. But the water was low enough; it was no problem. The other thing that changed for me is when I picked it back up in the fall, I hadn't done the low water route either time. So you were kind enough to take me to the trailhead, and I got to walk the low water route and ford the West Fork
of the Greenbrier.
West Fork of the Greenbrier. It was a nothing ford. The ford was easy. Getting back to West Fork Trail from the bank, man, the brush was growing up everywhere. Now, since then, I've learned the smart move is to stay close to the bank, walk downstream, and you will come to a clear spot to get up to the West Fork Trail. In fact, that ought to be the way to get there, I think. So that would change for me, and that is a nice little area there that I missed, and I missed it before. And finally, the final thing is, of course, I had figured out a way I was going to walk. I had planned to walk the gap, knowing I would be trespassing, and I was going to go down along Mary's Run and go up over the mountain where the tunnel is on the railroad and come out at, I think it's Warm Springs or Sweet
Hematite. You ended up in Hematite. Yep, and then get through Sweet Springs.
Sweet Springs. And then I had to resupply a paint bank. Well, this time I took the official walk around the gap. So I came into White Sulphur Springs. It was nice to see it without being in flood. That was, I did not mind walking that. It was pretty nice. The only problem is there's no cheap place to stay in White Sulphur Springs. They're all outrageously expensive. Unless you're willing to walk 12 miles to the next interstate exit.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. You go.
No, I was just going to ask you, I'm new to this, like 18 months in or so, but I'm wondering, in the span of all the hiking you've done these years, like I heard you say you're a tenor, so you don't do hammocks. Have you ever tried hammocks or like gear changes along the way from your first hike on the Allegheny to the second?
Yeah, right. I've done a lot of gear changes. It involves getting out your wallet or taking a armory to shave a couple ounces. So I'm now on my, I don't know, 7th, 10th. Now, a couple of them wore out. They just, that, it used to be called Cuban fiber, now has another name. But
Idema.
yeah, Dyneema. That's about the lightest. It's light, it's strong, it does not absorb water, but it doesn't hold up all that well. And so I wore out, well, I bought them used from somebody who hadn't done much. So I wore out 2 of those. Well, one of those I bought, one I bought used, and I wore them out, but of course it's nice and light. So my first hike on an 18, I was carrying a 4-pound tent. I must have had a base weight of course, of 30 pounds. That's why I lost so much weight. And when I decided to do the Pacific Crest Trail, it's a lot more distance between resupplies. So, but what I didn't know about that trail is it's graded for horses, very gradual. And of course, it's the public lands in the Sierras, and in fact, generally out west, there's a lot more public land. So you could make a nice general switchback, go half a mile one way, come back half a mile the other way. Very gentle climbs. And I knew it would be long distances between resupplies, sometimes 120 miles, one time 150 miles. And I wanted to have a lighter pack so I could go further faster, and pretty much did. The other thing that's changed over the years is I started out wearing heavy hiking boots. I could go get one in the garage and show you. That's what I used to work with now on the trail. And I switched to trail runners, and I tried doing that on which trail? The Pacific Crest Trail. Well, I switched to trail runners, came to a section where we were hiking over lava fields. I don't know if you ever hiked over lava fields, but it is sharp. It's like hiking over cinders, but they're big globs and pointy sharp. I just put my boots in a bounce bucket. You all know what a bounce bucket is? I guess I'll explain that. Well, if you're going to kind of self-support yourself and resupply along the way, for, in case of Pacific Crest Trail, 2,650 miles, you don't want to carry all those maps. You don't want to carry all the, like my kids, all my prescriptions, all my extra stuff. And so I had a pair of trail runners in my bounce bucket. And once I got through the Sierra Nevada, up into getting close to Oregon, I switched to trail runners. And wouldn't you know, I came across these lava fields. I had to pull ahead to the post office where I sent my bounce bucket. The bounce bucket is literally a bucket, a Home Depot bucket with a top and a handle. And I drilled through 3 holes in it and used zip ties to seal it tight so it wouldn't fall apart in the postal service. Send it ahead to a post office, carry general delivery. And I had to call ahead to that post office and say, could you forward that bounce bucket back to the next town so I could get my boot back? By then, my boots had, 5,000 miles on them with a second set of soles. And so they were pretty much molded to my feet. I found them comfortable, but now after that, on the Continental Divide Trail, I also kept, there's your cat.
I'm aware. He's enjoying these stories.
I kept my boots because I knew I'd be crossing snow and maybe need micro spikes and an ice axe. I didn't want to slide down all these passes in the Sierra Nevada on the Pacific Crest Trail, and you have to kick in steps. And I didn't think kicking in steps with trail runners would work as well as it would with boots. The boots did a pretty good job of kicking in steps, but the truth is, I was not in the first cohort of hikers going through in 2008 when I hiked that trail, or even 2010, 11, or 12 when I hiked the Continental Divide. So the steps were already pretty much kicked in. So I could have worn trail runners on those too. So
Do you
that's
have any
for
comments on the trail runners versus boots on our trail? I know a lot of people who hike out west say, oh yeah, trail runner, no problem with moisture and things like that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I still like the trail runners. I wore the trail runners for the Allegheny, both in the spring and the fall. It might have been nice to have the boots because it was pretty wet in May. You know, I am a snow man. And we did not have snow in 2011 when I hiked the Allegheny Trail in late March, which is early, or not early spring, it's just late winter. But I also had snow hiking the Allegheny Trail, I think it was May 2nd, and going south of Rollsburg, up, and you get there, you're climbing up the mountains, you're getting up on top of the Blackwater Rim. And there, I mean, fortunately, it wasn't a rainy day, but there was that snow that was on top that made 1.5 feet of snow up on the Blackwater Rim made an awful lot of water down low. And the most exciting part of the hike last spring in May 2nd or 3rd, I don't remember which particular day, was hiking a road called Peddler's Glory. And to do with bicycles, it doesn't. It had to do with guys that would peddle goods, you know, peddler come to the farm with a sack full of stuff to sell. Well, Peddler's Glory Road is not a road, or it is a dedicated county highway. Why? The only thing we could get over it are 4x4s or dirt bikes or somebody walking on foot. And Peddler's Glory Road, it actually is a stream bed. And the stream was roaring. I knew I wasn't going to make it to Ralsburg that day. And I'd stayed for 2 days in the rain at Friends of Cheat Campground. And Jim Meckley, who's the caretaker there, or was, he said, if you get in trouble, give me a call. So I knew I was in trouble. I wasn't going to make it to Ralsburg. I didn't want to set up my tent in the rain again. So what I did, it was kind of fun. I called him came to a view where the power lines are going down. I said, well, pretty high. Maybe I have service. And lo and behold, and I find that cell phone service, sometimes somehow power lines tend to improve your cell phone service. I don't know if they bounce off the power line or what, but I found that out west too. And I got him, I says, I guess 4 miles or so to go to get to West Virginia 7, up near Terrialty. And I'm not going to make it to Ralsburg. Is there any chance you could come and get me? Oh, sure. I'll be down there. I'll meet you at West Virginia 7. So it's a good thing I did that because, you know, you're going downhill to that Peddler's Glory road. The rain is continuing. The water is high and muddy. You say, oh my God, what have I got myself into? So there's the blaze on the other side of the road. I guess I'll have to cross the creek here. And it came up to about my knees. Now, I've done a lot of fording the streams that are fast, but I like to see what I'm walking on. And this was all muddy, of course. So I had to really feel my way. It's a good thing I didn't fall down because it's getting colder and colder. And I crisscrossed that stream more than once. So it didn't matter. Thank God, when I got to the top, we had a little miscommunication. I thought Terrialty was to the right. Terrialty was to the left, and the trail went to the left. So I'm walking, of course, whenever you make a wrong turn on a trail, I don't care where it is, it always seems you're walking downhill, which means when you finally figure out, hey, there's no blazes here, that means you've got to walk back uphill in the rain, in the cold, and I got to the point where I did have cell phone signal, but my hands were so cold, I could hardly do the thing, push the numbers on my iPhone to get where I could call Jim and say, Jim, I'm here. Where are you? Well, we finally figured it out. He came down and got me, took me back to Friends and Cheat Campground, had his heater going as high as it go, I think. Got pretty well dried out. So I stayed there one more night, and then he was kind enough, because it was coming on to Cheat Fest, he took me down to Ralsburg. So I missed that little section between West Virginia 7 and Ralsburg, but I made it one of the work sessions in the summer. I came down early, and Jim took me to West Virginia 7 and hiked that little section down to Ralsburg, where I
Sounds like some good hospitality.
Oh, Jim was wonderful.
Yeah, Jim's really helpful. I mean, he's helped me out on my hikes as well, and he's a really good resource for hikers in that section.
I was definitely on the edge of hypothermia there. So every once in a while, you have a little adventure, gets the adrenaline going, keep heart moving, let you know you're alive.
There you go. I like it. I like that attitude. I'm sure, Justin, you've been hiking a lot. You've probably experienced a lot of similar situations. Hopefully you haven't the hypothermia part, but the first
you're close this year.
No joke. But Rick, in your experience, we've got some new listeners, we've got experienced listeners. Give me a top 3 or top 5 list of things that you think are really important, kind of starting out for the new people. And I'll go 2 ways with this. I know you have a wonderful saying. I don't think it's your saying, but trails don't maintain themselves, right? So maybe 5 pieces, 3 pieces of equipment, whatever. And then maybe an opportunity where people can start to give back and think about, man, this is really fun. Besides just dollars, how can I help?
Yeah. Well, in addition to wanting to talk with the people about guidebook not having the bridge not being there, I hadn't gone far enough. The bridge was there. I decided, well, that's pretty close to home. They have this 5-day work week. It's worth driving down to West Virginia from Ohio. I'm only literally I can be in West Virginia in less than an hour. So, but the northern panhandle. No, I always felt, and even before I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2006, I'd gone out and worked on maintaining the Appalachian Trail. I volunteered for that, and the reason I did, my youngest daughter, who is going to be 48 this year, when she was 18, she did a section on, they call it the Conarock Cruise, one of the many trail crews that Appalachian Trail has. It's a week-long volunteer thing, and you learn how to maintain trails. Basically, we were digging new trail, digging side hill. I'm kind of a specialist in digging side hill. So I got in that, and that's what led me to do all the trail work, because you're walking on this beautiful trail. You don't realize how much work it was to dig even 50 yards of trail. and there are miles and miles of trail. A lot of that goes back to the days of the Civilian Conservation Corps, when during the Great Depression, when the guys would go to work. My father-in-law actually was at Watoga State Park, working on, who knows, he might have helped build some of those trails, the Allegheny Falls. But there's a lot of volunteer effort going into building trails, maintaining trails, getting permission to route your trail across somebody's private land. It just, you don't realize it. Many people hike a trail and they think, oh, the government did this. Well, I'm here to tell you, the government, by and large, didn't do it, or didn't do it all, and certainly doesn't maintain them. And over the years, the Forest Service does a good job of trying to maintain them, but their budget's been cut and cut again. So that's why volunteers are so important on maintaining a trail. In terms of, I think the other part of your question is, so even a lot of times when I hike, one back pocket has my little folding saw, the other one has a hand lopper, and I could do a little maintenance as I'm hiking if I'm not in a hurry to get somewhere or not run out of food and need to get to the next town so I have something to eat. In terms of other things, if you're just starting out backpacking and you're thinking about doing, first thing I'd say, do some day hikes with your pack on. Even for a day hike, you got to have certain things. You should have some kind of light source. You should have the ability to start a fire if you need to in an emergency. You should have a little first aid kit of some kind. You should have plenty of water. You should have some food. I know I'm leaving a lot of some kind of means to know which way is north and which way is south, because on a cloudy day, the sun is not going to help you. So a compass, of course, we now have all these razzle-dazzle gadgets with a far-out app that really, really helps. Before that, some of us had GPSs, and we put a track on our GPS. And I learned the hard way, you better double check that the track is all there, because I've run into a situation where my track had more than 500 points, and I came up in the middle of New Mexico to hiking on the Continental Divide Trail as a section of the trail called the Grand Enchantment Trail. It runs from Albuquerque to Phoenix through the mountains of New Mexico and Arizona. And there was a lot of cross-country hiking on that, where you'd have to know where you're going, actually follow a map or follow a track. So get some training in that. And be sure you know how to use your GPS, and don't count on it. You need those paper maps. Or I found, like, when I hiked the Allegheny Trail, even in 2011, I did not need the maps. I needed them in one area only, and that was the area where there was a clear cut. And of course, when they clear cut it, they cut down the tree with a blaze on it. So I kind of got lost there, and I, of course, lost downhill, as you always do, get lost downhill. Or I got on my GPS and said, this doesn't seem right. Oh no, I'm not on the trail. Let's see. Well, let's find the trail. And I could make a track back to it, which involved me bushwhacking up a mountain through a bunch of boulders, through a bunch of rhododendron. It was a struggle. And so second thing, and you got to have those basics just to hike anywhere. Day pack. Of course, you need a backpack. You need some kind of shelter. Because you can't count first you can't count on getting to one of the shelters that we have. The second thing is you can't count on there being room in the shelter for you. Although people are pretty good about making room. I've been in shelters to sleep 8 where they had 12 people in the shelter. because it was such a miserable day. So you got to have a shelter. You got to have a way to stay warm. You got to make sure those things, your sleeping bag and some clothes you're going to sleep in, stay dry.
Those are all really good tips for anybody starting out there. Justin, I want to jump on and be the hog here. I'm sure you have some questions or whatnot. You've been around Rick a long time, Handlebar. What are your thoughts? Do you have any questions for him?
I mean, I just enjoy listening to his experiences on here. I mean, they're really great to see the difference between his hike in 2011 and last year. I mean, there's been a lot of changes since then. So I really enjoyed just listening to those differences because I've only been around the trail since 2020. So I've not experienced anything before that. So I could see the difference in 4 years, but I mean, it's been a big difference in 4 years, but I mean, from 2011 to now, I'm sure that's been a good difference in your hike there.
Yeah. One particular area that I remember was there must be 5 laurel runs or a laurel creek or a laurel springs on the Allegheny Trail.
First, many laurel.
One of them is down in section 4, I think it's or maybe the bottom of section 3. And you come down the mountain to the road that will lead to Sherwood Lake, cross over that road. And I remember the first time I hiked going up there, the rhododendron was totally overgrowing the trail. I mean, it was a struggle to get through. Now, I also remember a couple of years later, W5 went down there and I helped cut out some of that stuff. And I could tell you this year, it was nice and clear. Almost everything was clear. I mean, there were a few blowdowns, but the day after you cut all the blowdowns, a windstorm comes along and there's a few more blowdowns. And sometimes you have to manage to get through them over, under, or around. Some ways you're going to get by those blowdowns. It's a normal thing. If you want to have an interstate trail, you got to go hike the Appalachian Trail or hike the Pacific Crest Trail. They're all like interstates. They're 4 feet. The tread is 3.5 feet wide. It's smooth. And, well, that's not true on the Appalachian Trail because they got the Pennsylvania rocks. But if you're on one of these other trails, and I hike many, many trails that are the smaller trails where trail clubs like the West Virginia Scenic Trails Association do the maintenance along with some partners. And a lot of them are in Pennsylvania, and the Forestry Department of Pennsylvania maintains those trails. They're maybe a foot wide on the tread. Oftentimes they're overgrown.
Yeah. Well, Rick, we've had so much fun tonight having you on. I'm going to bring Julie back on here for a second. She helps us wrap things up. This has been a great event for those of you that want to come out and talk with Rick more. He's going to be at some trail events this year. Spring the Trail for sure, the W5 if all goes well. For those of you that are new, come on out, talk with him, learn from him. We all enjoy it. We all do learn from him every time he comes and shares his wisdom for sure. Just want to turn it over to Julie for a little bit, Justin and Rick to close us out.
All right, I'm good, I think. There were some questions in the chat. There was a question about how old you were, Handlebar. I put 79. I think that's right.
I'll be 79 in May.
There we go. So there was a question, and you can just say one word answer: hiking poles or walking stick?
Hiking poles.
Boom. There you go. And I think we've answered everything that was in the chat. We had comments in general that I popped up on the screen. And yeah, it was just great to hear stories about the Allegheny Trail.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are Rick fans and Handlebar fans, he's also in our short film that Jester Wallace Productions produced. Is going to be premiering this September at our 50th celebration. So this won't be the last time you hear from Rick. So we thank you all. Justin, I'll let you close out the show tonight if you want.
Yeah, it's been great having you on here, Handlebar. I'm sure everybody really enjoyed listening to your stories from both hikes of the trail. And I mean, as much hiking as you've done, it's been great to listen to all your experience. And I mean, I'm sure people want to listen to you more. So, I mean, hopefully they'll encourage people to come out. I mean, you come out and hang out with you at camp or some of these work events. There's a lot they can learn from you for sure.
One more thing I want to say, and that is the people I met in West by God, Virginia, are the nicest people in the whole country. They'll do whatever you need done for. They'll help you out. So don't hesitate to, if you're in Pennsylvania, you're in Southeast Ohio, you're in Maryland, or you're in Virginia, you'll get a warm welcome at West Virginia Scenic Trails Association at any of the events and on the trail from the towns and the people you meet.
Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
Really great words. We appreciate that. Well, with that, that's a beautiful farewell. So we'll see you all. We'll see you in May.